All right, we're here with our BNI Business of the Week, Innovator on Daybreak, Paul Hirst with Hirst Design. Is that the correct name?
Correct. Hirst Design, yeah.
We got it. You got it. Good job, Blaine.
Well, I'm just saying, well, they had another name when we first got him on the BNI.
It did have another name, and if you want that story at some point, I can tell you the story of how that all changed. But it's not a bad story. It's just as time has gone on, the business has been around since 2002, and it was Hirst Design.
Yeah.
I brought on a partner. At that point, the business name changed to include my partner's name.
Yeah.
And then business changed, and so then I renamed everything, but didn't go back to Hirst Design, and now I'm back at Hirst Design.
Okay, there it is.
With what I have to argue is arguably one of the best taglines. Give us that tagline.
Oh, yeah.
If you need architecture, call Paul Hirst first.
Paul Hirst first.
Tell me what, you know what, I got a great question for you because I know it's a great question.
Okay, let's hear it.
I don't know
You're
the
not
answer.
you're not biased.
What's the difference in construction and architect? Because aren't both building things? Like, what are you doing?
So if you went back 200 years, the architect was also often the general contractor on the site. He was there directing the work. May not be doing the work, but he was there directing the work. He had designed the project. So the further back in time you go, the more the architect was actually involved with the whole thing from the design through the construction. But then you had cathedrals that would take hundreds of years to get built, and we don't live to be hundreds of years old, so we have different people over.
Not yet.
So really what an architect today does is we do the design documentation, the contract documentation, to get a physical thing built, and then work with the contractor through the construction process to ensure that what we intended to build when we started is what gets built at the end of the process.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference. We don't actually, we can't tell a contractor how to do anything. We can just tell them what we want the end result to be.
Now that end result, what is your end result and how is it different than other people's? Like what are you,
So I'm going to tell
you. Yeah, answer real quick for that. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. He's like, this is my world.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a story that's a little bit, you're going to say, what does this have to do with architecture? But,
We'll get there.
I love those kinds. Let's go.
Let's
so
go.
when I was growing up, everyone in the family had to take piano lessons. And I took piano lessons till I was 12, 13 years old. But my parents, they weren't going to use a stick, and they couldn't find the right carrot, so I kind of faded off.
Yeah.
To my regret now, you know.
I was gonna have you go play a song in our piano room over there. That's
my
not
sisters,
you, huh? Okay.
They kept going.
Okay.
And my sisters would play, and my dad would say, as they got done, and it would be, they played pretty well, but he'd always tell them, one more time with feeling.
Oh.
And the last little while I've been thinking about how to describe why I think I'm different than others.
Yeah.
And that is that I've tried to do architecture with feeling.
Okay.
It's not to say other architects haven't, but the difference is really how do you feel in your house, and if you've been there 20 years, are you still having those same feelings as you did the day you moved in about your house? I designed the house for some people in Minnesota that they were my neighbors, and they bought a lot on a lake and designed them a nice house. We still stay in touch with them. We ended up buying a lot, building a house next to them, but not on the lake because we're not rich. We still are in contact with them, and they still love their house.
Oh,
that's been
the whole difference. Yeah.
So if I can come up with a project and design it in order that you still love it 20 years later.
That's a good project.
When did the love of architecture hit you?
So that's a little complicated too. When I got done with high school, I was a computer nerd, and I thought I was going to go do 3D computer movies. Now, I'm so old that Pixar didn't exist when I decided to do this. So my freshman year of school, I had a double major of computer science and art. Figure out some way to merge those two. I served in LDS Church Mission in Finland, and we can talk about Finland later. But it was when I was in Finland, and I'd go into some of the church buildings in Finland, some of the modern Lutheran church buildings, or their libraries, or even their civic buildings, and there was a feeling in those buildings that sort of captivated me. And then when I returned home, I decided I probably wasn't going to do the computer graphics thing. Flailed around a bit, took some career aptitude tests at school, and architect kept showing up near the top of the list, and
They knew.
It's hard to ignore.
Yeah.
Right?
so there it is. So I finished an undergraduate degree in civil engineering, and I went and got a master's degree in architecture.
Okay. Well, that's incredible. We didn't talk about the engineering side of it, which plays a huge role when you are developing some super cool spaces, right? When you have like the complex lot, you have that understanding as well when you're designing.
Yeah, I mean, gravity and wind are probably your two things that you're worried about.
It's important.
I still hire out to a structural engineer, but I think that I'm at least talking to them with a little bit more understanding of what they're going to go through. And
how the puzzle fits together. Yeah.
A good fundamental understanding of where the loads go, how the loads react, and
when does somebody hire you? Like, who would hire you and when? Because I'm, if I'm building a house, I don't know where it starts.
With residential houses, you can hire me before you even pick a lot, and I could work with you as you pick out lots depending on what your needs are.
Yeah.
Most often I get hired after someone has a lot and they want a custom home. We have tried to work with tract builders in the past, but that's not really where we do the best work.
What is a tract builder? Is that like cookie cutter homes?
Yeah, so even at Daybreak, we work with production builders. Maybe that's a better
okay. There you
production builders, where they're repeating the same designs over and over again. Just because you throw different finishes in doesn't mean the house is any different.
Yeah. Same plan.
And that's how you get those different names. I want the Hirst looks. Like, that's what I'm looking for. Like,
and the builders just pull the names out of a hat.
Yeah.
So.
Or like you have some special in with them, and then like you could name the house. Like the Becks. I feel like there should be the Becks.
There should.
I don't know. I'm just gonna throw it out there to the builders.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, Paul. Maybe your next design, right?
The
Becks. No, but I actually had Paul come out and take a look at my house. Because for us, there was some structural things that aren't quite working for me right now with the growth of my family, right? Like we went from needing a lot of bedrooms to we need a larger living room space, right? So I'm like, Paul, come out and take a look at this for me. And so he was able to help to navigate through like, I think we could do this, or we could move this. So
put some bunk beds in.
Yeah, no, I don't need the beds. I don't need the bedrooms anymore. I need the floor space. But for you, right? Because you guys are gonna have 6 more kids. So
no, it's not. I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's not physically possible.
It's not possible.
For multiple reasons.
No, not that that's the number one thing that you do. I know you're more into like the what, Paul? Tell me your ideal client is.
So the ideal client is somebody that has enough money to spend.
Yep.
And realistic about how much the money they have, how far that will go.
That goes, yeah.
Do you work up front with somebody on that? Like, you talk that out? And
Yeah, we can certainly talk about it. Like, if somebody comes to us and says, I want a 6,000 square foot house and my budget's $50 a square foot.
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
So
everybody is that.
Yeah.
That's just not going to happen. So ideally somebody that has a reasonable budget.
Yep.
And a reasonable expectation of how far that money will go.
Custom homes.
For custom homes.
I
also do and have done all sorts of other commercial projects. So I've done everything from strip malls to dentist offices, multifamily. I've done some assisted living work, condos.
What's your favorite project to work on?
My favorite would be a residential that's a little bit constrained in some way.
Like, what do you mean?
It's got a challenge.
It's got a challenge. It's got a challenge.
Yeah.
The more constraints there are on the project, the more creative you have to be to solve the problem.
Like a tree growing through the middle of the house or something like that.
Well, I'll give you an example of this. Well, sorry to interrupt you. I'll give you an example. We had a lot in Bluffdale. I should have called you because we were at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was a 1 acre lot, a beautiful lot. End of a cul-de-sac, right? We just talked about how I need more living room, family room space because I have 4 kids. I've got 4 bonus kids, so that's 8. We just had 2 marriages. That's 10. I got 10 kids right now. My family is going to keep growing, right? The big Utah
You got
family.
people come in and sleep and you don't even know they're here.
It's true. It's true. Like I wouldn't know. So we were designing this home. Well, the constraint was in Bluffdale, we had to have this 30-foot setback. And which really kept cutting down the living room, which is the reason we're moving and building this, plan to have this lot, which meant we had to keep cutting back the living room. And I'm like, this is like really frustrating me. So I should have known you and called. And so that's what he means. Like there's a challenge.
Yeah.
And we maybe could have reworked some things, but we ended up selling it.
The house that we had in Minnesota, again, it was a pie-shaped lot in a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
I think we had a 30-foot setback from the street to the house. But I was also on almost a cliff.
Yeah. So your building envelope is so small.
So, but with a little creativity,
Yeah.
we ended up with, I call it a double long, double wide, because that's about what it was. It was a kind of a long, skinny house.
Yeah.
It had a walkout basement, but we used the excavation dirt from the house to build a bit of a backyard.
Nice. Just kind of push that dirt back.
Push the dirt down over the hill.
Love
And
this.
so that house, a normal builder would have come in and looking at a normal plan, or a plan out of a plan book, or whatever. That wouldn't happen. You couldn't put up just anything on that lot.
Yeah.
And so, your lot in Bluffdale, that probably is the same thing. You couldn't just put anything on the lot. You would have had to have really carefully considered and thought about how to do that. But I think it would have been doable.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really narrow in a section because of the bulb that you get on a roundabout, right? So, and then you have the 30-foot setback, so it really constrains that building envelope back.
Where do you find the creativity to come up with stuff like that? To come up with the answer to the problem that somebody has? What do you do to find it? Or
so a lot of times I'll just go out, sit out on the site and
by yourself,
and with a notepad and a sketch pad, and just start sketching out some ideas. I will also know from the client what they want. So it's there's a lot of inputs that go in, and then it's sitting down on the site and getting a feel for what it is. A north-facing lot is different than a south-facing lot.
Completely.
A lot that looks at the mountains is different than a lot that doesn't look at the mountains. You start to look at things like, some people are morning people and like the sun coming in, and some people are not morning people and don't want the sun coming in. So putting a bedroom on the west side versus the east side of the house.
All things to consider.
As you're thinking about it. And then you're going to end up with some things where you can't do A and B. So you have to prioritize, is A or B more important?
Right. That's one of the things I really appreciated when we did my walkthrough, when we were thinking about the addition, right? Like the glass, and my husband has very modern aesthetic and really likes that. We live in a currently very traditional home for the most part, so how to adjust those. But what he said to me is, he's like, how do you use the space?
And I love what he says.
I want you to think about how you're using this space, because for me, right, we talked about that was the highest priority. What's causing the pain point is the current home that I'm in. The pain point is what used to work for the space with the bedrooms and the young kids is how we're using it now is the problem I need to solve, which he dove right into. I'm like, I love this guy. Like, he's so great to work with. Really intentional.
Yeah, and a lot of it is looking at, and whether it's a house or commercial building or whatever it is, it's what do you want to encourage to happen in that space, and how do you design that house to make that thing happen in the best way possible, and what do you want to discourage from happening in that space, and how do you discourage those things from happening. And every project's different, every client's different, every It's not a really like super simple answer. But for example, I had a client that they loved to cook as a family, and they'd have 3 or 4 people in the kitchen at the same time. Mm-hmm. Designing a kitchen for 3 or 4 people, a residential kitchen for 3 or 4 people, is different than just putting in a kitchen.
Yeah.
But that was what they wanted to have happen, and so we designed the kitchen around that type of lifestyle. On the other hand, I had another client that they could care less about cooking. Mm-hmm. They're lucky if they grilled anything.
Yeah.
But they love to watch.
Talking about me.
Love to watch sports.
They love to watch what?
They love to watch sports.
Oh, sports.
Didn't matter what season it was.
Yeah.
The TV or TVs were on.
Yeah.
And so the kitchen was a perfectly fine kitchen.
Yeah.
But we didn't spend a ton of money on the appliances.
Wasn't important.
It was functional. Did what it needed to be. If you sold the house,
it would work.
It all works.
That's me. Give me a hot plate and a 100-inch TV. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's what we designed, was the space for around them to, as a family, to enjoy those things. So those are just one way to do it. When I was designing the space for my kids, I didn't want them going off and watching TV, and so the TV space was part of the family space, and we designed spaces so that the family could be in proximity to each other without being on top of each other and doing different things. So we had a little nook where you could read but see what's going on in the kitchen and see what's going on in the living room, but you were still kind of isolated. So there's all sorts of things that you can do.
Stuff that we don't think about, but
it's got a mind for it.
Been out there thinking and plotting this stuff out.
Truly. Bet you've designed some cool things.
Yeah.
What's been one of your favorites?
One of my favorites was our house in Minnesota, which we designed for ourselves.
Oh, yeah, you asked that, huh?
That was cool. Yeah. I had a client that it was one of the first projects I did in Minnesota, and he wanted a Craftsman style home that fit in northern Minnesota.
Okay.
And so, and he wanted some Frank Lloyd Wright like detailing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so I designed this house, and he'd send me stuff, and at the time I was working for a construction company. It was a design build firm, and I finished up the documents and turned them over for them to get pricing on it. And my boss walks in and says, "Do you know what you've done?" And I said, just give him the client one. He says, "We've never built anything like this.
Oh,
wow.
Never done anything like this before." He says, "Just, you know how expensive it's going to be?" He said,
"It's what they wanted."
It's what they wanted. And that house turned out really awesome.
And that's in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's in northern Minnesota.
They built it. They moved forward with it.
I have pictures of it.
Now there's a TV show that's based in Minnesota that I love.
What is it?
Coach. Remember that show, Coach, with Craig T. Nelson, Hayden Fox? I want a replica cabin built like what he
What
had.
is this? I don't know this show.
He was a college football coach, lived in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota.
Okay.
But this was a house. It was not a cabin.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And afterwards, Minnesota Craftsman started popping up all over the place.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
It started a trend.
Yeah.
You started the trend. You were the trend. Is it continuing? Is Craftsman still a style there?
It could still be going.
Yeah.
I bet there's some variation of it at least.
Oh, yeah. How long has it been since you've left Minnesota?
Let's see. We moved from Minnesota in 2017, spent a couple of years in the UK, and then from the UK moved here.
Okay.
So.
What part of the UK were you in?
Just outside of London.
Was that for business? Were you learning architecture?
I took a little bit of hiatus from the architecture stuff after the economy collapsed in 2008. Yeah. We were in a small town in Minnesota. The 3 employers were the school district, the hospital system, and contractors doing lake homes.
Yeah.
And when construction quit, everything associated with the construction side just died. And so I took a bit of a hiatus on full-time architecture, still did stuff on the side, spent some time in the tech industry, and cybersecurity, and but back into architecture. So
Utah winters, how do they compare to Minnesota? I have to ask.
So January's
right now is cold.
I remember one January where I think the high was minus 20, minus 10. That was the high for January. So
I got 80 pounds of clothes on. I'm actually about 110 pounds. That's
I believe it.
So I got 80 pounds because it's so cold.
Yeah.
most of
so
the time
cold.
we would get snow in November and it would melt in March or April.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Paul. If you remember, we lived in Minnesota for a little while, so we're Vikings season ticket holders. And when we go back, like we have to time our games. Like Utah winters are cold, but they are not the same as Minnesota winters. If y'all don't know that. So it was -7 once, and I thought I was gonna die just walking 2 blocks. And they've got like the Skyway, but you know, we haven't lived there for so long, we forgot how to navigate, and the stadium wasn't too far from our Airbnb that we were staying at in downtown Minneapolis, but it was that wind chill on top of -7.
No.
I literally thought I was gonna die. It's cold. It's a different kind of cold.
But my kids would go out and they would school was almost never canceled.
Yeah.
It would be late starts, but that's because the diesel, they had to warm up the diesel.
Get it going.
Because otherwise it would gel in the engine.
Yeah.
So they'd do late starts. They would still go outside for recess. I think -10 was the cutoff when they would go outside.
That part I didn't know because I never had school age
So they
kids
all
there.
had snow pants and snow clothes that they'd take to school and just leave there.
Well, that's a good cutoff because you know what? Anything less than -10, you know, limbs break off. So.
Contractors would quit at -20.
Oh.
That is just a different lifestyle.
Yeah, it is.
Wow. Like I thought we were doing pretty well here in Utah. Like that is a entirely different species out there.
I'm happy to not be in that cold.
Surprised he's not out here in shorts and a t-shirt.
No,
I have returned to. I grew up in Sandy.
Okay.
So I have returned back to Utah winters.
Yeah.
My kids, though, which grew up in Minnesota.
Oh.
Like, they wouldn't put a coat on for this.
Yeah. It was like 8 degrees out here in South Jordan the other day. So that's cold for us.
I remember
that's a little chilly.
I remember when we were excited when it got to 10.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And that was July. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So, and that's one of the other things, just getting back to tying architecture into it, is Minnesota is a really harsh climate.
You got to design for that.
Where we lived, you could have a 140-degree temperature swing between winter and summer.
Yeah.
Wow.
And how you manage the humidity and moisture inside the house and outside the house to make sure that it is durable, you don't get mold, and any of those types of issues is a real challenge. Utah is actually a really forgiving climate because it's so dry here.
Yeah.
So if you can manage the bulk water here and not have leaks, plumbing leaks, then most of the time we generally don't have issues with mold here.
Yeah.
It's when you can't manage the bulk water and then it gets into your system, or you end up with plumbing leaks or something.
He's got it all figured out.
It's true. So many things that go into architect and design that, like, my little brain had no idea, right? Like, so many thoughtful things. Which just makes an invaluable partner in
the BNI. In the BNI for us.
In design. Yeah.
So the BNI, you were in the architecture seat. Is there a top for that? Is there a category? You know how we have 5? Is that?
Yeah, he's in home, I think, right?
Okay.
Aren't you in the home?
In home. Oh, yeah. It's. I'm not sure.
Home and real estate
because it's like it's a professional kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It isn't a trade.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing with the architecture side is teeth whiteners, you can do that regularly.
Yeah.
But architecture, you're gonna maybe build 1 or 2 houses in your life.
Yeah.
Or even with a business, that's not something that happens. So that's just it's a less frequent kind of.
You and I are a little unique that way because we don't get referrals every day. You probably a little less than I do. So maybe dive into, have you been in BNI before this? Is this your first group?
So I have not been in BNI before this. My former architecture partner was in BNI in our small town in Minnesota. And the challenge there was it was a small town in Minnesota.
Yes.
And so once you kind of knew everybody, you knew everybody. And that was a bit of a challenge. So this is my first time in BNI.
Okay.
And I don't know of a better way to build the network than it right now.
Yeah.
Architecture marketing has always kind of been a challenge. Anyway, how do you get to the people before they know they need you, so that they know to call you once they figure out they need you?
Right.
Which is that's
networks and people, right? It's relationships. Yeah.
So, but so far, I've had a few referrals. I think one of them might still come through, but I don't know what's happened with that one. Before I came here, I visited another referral in Camas, and then on the way, the drive home, I talked to another referral.
There you go.
About a project. So the Camas is some potentially commercial stuff. The other one was a house in Spanish Fort. So
it's a beautiful area, Camas.
So we're doing this thing here where people are just throwing out to the universe what they want.
Oh,
within our BNI, we haven't really officially done it, but everybody's kind of done it.
Yeah.
What do you want, man? What do you want to build out there that you haven't built? Like, what do you want?
Oh yeah. What's your
dream job?
What's my dream
project?
Yeah, that's kind of fun to ask his creative mind.
I know.
So there's a company that does log homes based out of Finland.
Oh, here we go.
But they do, rather than go cut down trees and look for big giant trees to build the logs with, they harvest trees in Finland and then build the logs so they're built up pieces. But they do these square logs instead of round ones. So it's more rectangular.
Yeah.
And I would love to do a $2 to $3 million cabin that can incorporate this, like not 100% log, but
maybe that'll be
that product.
Maybe we'll do a half and half replica of Hayden Fox's cabin in Minnesota, and I'll take you up on that.
I gotta look at that product. That's really cool.
Honka.
Okay.
Spell it.
Honk.
That's with probably two dots over the.
Sorry,
Honka. Honka.
Honka log homes.
So there it is. You got it out there now.
You know what would be really cool? I just am like jumping on this vision. Something like that in Bear Lake would be, or Fish Haven, or right up there on the lake would be beautiful.
Those would be really fun.
Super cool space.
Yeah, so that would be fun to do.
My real estate mind's like, where can I get some land?
The other thing that, if you're just wishing for whatever, is a 10-story Art Deco high-rise in the downtown Daybreak.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
A skyscraper for Daybreak.
Cool.
How I Met Your Mother was Ted Mosby was the famous architect. There you go.
Yeah,
he does the skyscraper.
There it is.
Yeah.
So that would be fun. That is.
How long would that take you?
So high-rise buildings are kind of interesting in that you've got the ground floors. So the first 2 and 3 floors are usually a little different, and then you copy everything up until the top.
Yeah.
And the top might be a little different.
Okay.
So, the design work isn't that long. Construction's a little different, but the design work is. Yeah.
That's I got a strong interest in this.
I know, it's really fascinating.
There's a lot that goes into it that I just didn't really think about. Like,
where was I? We just went to New York, I think, this last November, and I don't know how much you know about other projects that are built and this and that, but like my mind really has been open to this. Because you don't necessarily think of the design, but we were in Central Park and we were doing a horse carriage ride, and we took the twins. It was a lot of fun but we were doing a horse carriage ride, and there was a building there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was like the top of it. I'm going to totally slaughter this, but the top of it was like built up like this, and he's like, yeah, for the wind or whatever, and there's like this cutout, and you don't think of like the balance, and then there's like this cantilever deck that comes off, like super cool things that they do in New York's Manhattan, right? And I was like, oh my gosh,
high rises are a challenge because the wind load gets really high,
and the wind.
So a lot of them will have systems up in the top of them that dampen it against.
That's I think what it was. I knew the architect would know.
There you go.
Just ask him.
Those are pretty common. Well, they're needed in all high rises because otherwise, just the wind is going to cause it to sway. Structurally, everything's fine, but it's uncomfortable for people.
Yeah.
One of the other things that happens in office buildings is if you put the floor joists at the wrong or the right, depending on how you look at it, distance apart.
Yeah.
As people walk, it will amplify the resonance, and it will feel like mini earthquakes. And you may have felt that in commercial buildings.
Yeah.
And that's, in order to solve that, you just need to, every once in a while, offset one of those an inch or two so that the harmonic frequencies can't build and do that. So
that's why.
Super cool thing, Paul. It's so fascinating to talk to you. Like, I learned so much.
Like, I could keep going, but I better not.
I know. You got to save it.
Yeah, we do. We want to have it back on.
Yes, absolutely.
Paul, we appreciate you joining us here. The BNI Business of the Week, Innovator of Daybreak. He really is.
Truly.
He's out here. He's got so much stuff in his
out here
head.
Innovating.
That he probably drives down the street and is like, oh, I could do this, and this.
Yes. If you want to meet Paul or connect with us at Daybreak Business Community, we meet every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And
at the
DCC, Daybreak Community Center. More information below.
And then, Paul, you got to tell us the tagline one more time to get out.
You need an architect, call Paul Hirst first.